It's Blair, BlueBlairy Fitness, Blair Wyatt. I'm a personal trainer out of Metroflex Gym here in San Marcos, Texas. And this video, I'm going to try and keep it short, but I'm creating it to just be completely open, completely honest about my struggles with food over, the last 10 years or so. I guess the best place to start is when all of my issues and struggles with my weight started. I was kind of a chubby kid growing up. I was never, crazy overweight. I did get made fun of here and there for being a little heavier. I like to eat. Who doesn't? But growing up, mac and cheese was my favorite food and made me happy. I didn't like to be too active, but you're a kid. You don't think much about any of that stuff, and until somebody points it out and tells you you're fat. So 8th grade, I started to feel peer pressure. I wanted to look good. Being a young girl, you want the attention of boys, and I'd always been a little chubbier, so I didn't get a lot of attention. So in 8th grade, I went on the Atkins diet. So if you're not familiar with it, it's a very low-carb diet, basically high-fat, high-protein, low carbs. So fruits were off limits, bread, of course, pasta, everything was off limits in regards to carbs. So I ate a lot of cheese, a lot of bacon. To be honest, thinking back, I don't really know what else I ate because it was so long ago, but stayed away from fruit, stayed away from bread, 8th grade. So ended up losing, I think 15 pounds or so on that diet. But of course, once I realized that I couldn't do it anymore, once I started eating bread and carbs again, I gained it all back. So it wasn't anything that I could keep up with long term. So throughout high school, my weight fluctuated anywhere, between 115 to 150 pounds. Started playing tennis, was a little more active, didn't like exercising, I liked tennis, but I didn't like conditioning. Whenever we had to run, I hated it. So didn't pay attention to nutrition, was still a little on the heavier side, but overall pretty healthy. So, but I struggled big time with body image issues. So my jeans were always tight, my shirts were tight. I wanted to be thin, but I didn't know how. And I was in high school. So I struggled on and off for years with hating how I looked, but not understanding why I looked the way I looked. I thought I was just heavier set, and there were girls that were skinny and could eat what they want, and that's how they were. And I was just one of the girls that wasn't blessed to be able to eat what I wanted. So I ate a little bit less than what most people did, but of course didn't think too much about it because I didn't know. I didn't have any knowledge of what a healthy diet looks like and what healthy foods were. So then one summer after my sophomore year, I think, I worked at a gym in Wimberley, and the gym was really slow. So I started walking on the treadmill while I was at work. I know, bad employee, but it was so boring during the day. I would just get on the treadmill and walk until somebody came in and watch TV. Well, there would be days where I would be walking for an hour and nobody would come in. So I'm just walking on the treadmill doing cardio and just keeping myself busy. And that was before all the really cool iPhones and stuff. So I didn't really have any way to surf the web. I don't think they had a computer there. You just signed in manually. And so I just walk on the treadmill and started losing a little bit of weight. And I thought, oh, this kind of cool. Maybe I'll get healthy. Didn't lift, but kept going on the treadmill. Eventually I started jogging, and eventually I was able to jog. I remember the first time I was able to jog 10 minutes without stopping. That was huge. It was slow. It was like 5 miles per hour, but I did it. And that was big for me. So I was like, okay, let's keep this up. I'm starting to slowly lose some weight, so I want to get skinny. Let's do this. So then I started trying to watch my eating a little more, and I thought fat was the enemy. So everything that I ate was low fat. So I would go to Subway for lunch and always get the low fat chicken teriyaki 6-inch sub, no cheese. That would be my biggest meal of the day. I would eat a lot of oatmeal, rice, cereal, because it was all low fat. I didn't pay attention to anything else, didn't know anything about protein, just low fat, because I thought that having fat in my diet would automatically put fat on my body. So I avoided it. I would have anything that had 5 grams of fat or more, I would avoid like the plague. So I would look for low fat protein bars at the store and have my parents buy them, and Subway and everything like that, 6 grams of fat or less. I ate a lot of lean cuisines and those meals, but as long as they were less than 5 grams of fat. So somewhere between sophomore year and junior year, I actually lost, I want to say about 25 pounds in the summer months, just by, I got up to running 30 minutes to an hour every day, 7 days a week, and eating no fats in my diet. So, of course, if you cut out all fats, if you cut out any macronutrient, your calories are going to drop dramatically. So, lost a whole bunch of weight, got really, really thin. I got down to about 120, maybe a little bit less. And as of right now, I'm over 130, so it's not 120 isn't, a healthy weight for me whenever I had no muscle. So came back junior year, and everybody noticed that I had lost weight. Everyone was telling me, "You're so skinny. Oh my gosh, what did you do?" And I loved that people noticed, not just because I had put in the work, because that was part of it, but they were noticing me, and I had always wanted to be skinny, and finally they were calling me skinny, and so I was like, oh my gosh, I have to keep this up. So kept running. I would run at least 45 minutes to an hour every morning, and then played tennis. So I would play tennis. We'd practice and have tennis matches, and I was playing tennis at least 5 days a week. Sometimes on the weekends, but I always ran, so I had to run. And still avoided fats and just wanted to be skinny. I remember I would see pictures of myself, and I wanted my arms to look like little bean poles. Like I wanted them to be this thin. And that's all I cared about. I don't know where I got that image of what that I should look like, but I just remember whenever I would see pictures of myself, I hated how my arms looked, and I just wanted to be skinnier and skinnier. And so kept avoiding fats. My meals, I would normally eat oatmeal for breakfast and then sometimes for dinner. Lunch, Slim Fast. I remember taking Slim Fast to school a lot. And of course, I wanted to be skinny, and I thought skinny was healthy, so nobody thought there was an issue. I didn't think there was an issue at the time, until looking back and realizing that I was terribly afraid of fats in my diet. I mean, peanut butter, avocado, anything like that was just, oh no. So I would eat rice with soy sauce. My mom would make this dish that has ground beef and vegetable soup and rice, and she calls it cowboy stew. I would always have her make the rice separate, so that I could eat just a bowl of rice and put soy sauce in it, and that would be my dinner. But you're a high school kid, and parents always tell you to eat, and you don't want to listen to them, so I wouldn't listen to them. I would eat my rice, and it kept me skinny, and I was happy with that. So I remember, and one of the points looking back, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but looking back and knowing that I disliked how I looked that much at the time, it just breaks my heart. And I remember there was one time in high school, I had the flu. I was homesick with the flu, and I weighed myself, and I was 115. And I remember thinking to myself, this is awesome. I was dehydrated. I hadn't eaten all day, and all I could think about was the number on the scale. and how low it was and how I wanted to be 110. I wanted to be less than that. So I was thinking, this is cool. Like, I'm on my way to hitting my goal weight. And the fact that I was sick and it just blows my mind that I viewed myself that way. So fast forward, after I graduated high school, kept doing my cardio, joined Planet Fitness. I was going to ACC, joined Planet Fitness, and I was on the elliptical. Hours. Avoided weights, didn't want to get bulky. Kept eating, cereal, rice, oatmeal for meals. That's whenever Matt and I started dating. So, of course, whenever you're dating somebody, you start going out to eat and get a little more comfortable. And I started seeing some pounds coming back on. And that was really, really hard for me. So I wanted so badly to keep my weight down, especially now that I was dating him. I've always had something about I never want to weigh more than my boyfriend. He was thin, so that was always a fear of mine. But kept doing my cardio. That's whenever I started using my Fitness Pal. So I would log my food into my Fitness Pal, and my goal was to stay under 1,000 calories a day. And mind you, we were pretty active. Matt and I were pretty active together. We played tennis, and I was going to Planet Fitness 6-7 days a week and doing at least an hour of cardio, sometimes 2 hours a day. So I definitely needed more than 1,000 calories a day, but I thought that that's what would make me skinny. So I remember there were a couple days that I was logging my food and I was under 600 calories. And this is actually something that I've never told anybody. So I think that day I had eaten oatmeal for breakfast, oatmeal for lunch, celery in the afternoon for a snack, maybe a Slim Fast for dinner, but 600 calories. And I was like, this is what's going to get me to my goal. So that went on for a little while longer. My weight kept fluctuating. I didn't know why, because I was doing a bunch of cardio and I was eating, but I hated my body. I hated it. I felt fat. My arms were flabby. I hated my stomach. I always covered my stomach, sitting down, and you always have your hands crossed, or I'd grab a pillow and I put it over my stomach. And because I was always afraid of having those rolls. And I always assumed that people would see me and that's all they saw were the rolls on my stomach. So tried to stay active as much as possible. I would log in my food and my exercise into my Fitness Pal, and I just aimed to get my calorie intake and that energy balance lower and lower. So I always wanted to burn a lot more calories than I took in and eat as little as possible. I don't know how I had the energy to do anything, to be honest. And then I remember I was so deprived that I would, whenever we would have family get-togethers, I would just binge and I would just eat and eat. And I know that family get-togethers, of course, everybody eats. Everybody's happy and everybody's together, and our family just eats, which I love to eat, but I wouldn't be able to stop, and I would get so physically sick from eating so much, especially things that I wasn't used to, like cheese and chocolate and candy. I would just eat and I couldn't stop. And I thought it was normal. I was like, oh, I'm just going to treat myself here. But then the next day I would wake up and you have that dry feeling in your mouth. You're dehydrated, and I would feel guilty. And so I would do an extra hour or two of cardio just to make up for it. And then possibly try and eat even less if I could. And so I would always try and make up for food with cardio. So I always had that association. Oh, we went out to eat at TGI Fridays and I had some chips or a breadstick, and I'll just do some extra cardio. And it never failed that I would always feel so guilty after eating what I would eat. And that's, again, these are things that I've never told anybody. So, it's so hard to deal with on your own. And anybody that's ever dealt with bad relationships with food knows exactly where I'm coming from, that, you know, one, you don't want to feel this way, but you do. But you have to keep it inside, because when you deal with body image issues and you know, disordered relationships with food, it's something that is either brushed to the side or taken very lightly by others. And I'm not saying for everybody, but and you know, you don't want to bring that out into the open, because people are just going to tell you, oh, you know, you look fine, you don't need to worry about it, you're thin, or you don't need to work out, or you don't need to worry about what you eat. You know, especially with women, that's something that we hear a lot of, but it doesn't make it okay. Just because somebody tells you you don't need to lose weight, you don't need to worry about what you eat, it doesn't make it all okay in your head. It's such a mental game that you play with yourself on a daily, hourly, minute basis. Struggling with, I really want this, but I know I shouldn't. I ate this, but I know I shouldn't have. Now I need to punish myself. I need to do cardio. I feel fat. It's just so many things swirling in your head, and it's awful. And so back to my story. Matt and I had been dating a few years, and my weight was slowly climbing up and up and up and up. And I remember whenever we got engaged in New Orleans, 2012, I think it was, 2012, my weight had finally gotten back over 130. And that was something that I had vowed to myself to never let happen again. Once I got back in the 120s, I told myself, never again will I see 130. I don't care what it takes. I'm never going to see 130. And I remember we had gone to New Orleans, and of course you're going to eat on vacation, and my weight was over 130. And I felt so sick with myself because I thought I had let myself go. At that point, I'd been working out a little bit more, doing a little less cardio, started actually learning more about lifting weights and what they can possibly do for your body. But then again, I also thought I was just one of those women that was unlucky. I thought that I was getting bulky from lifting, so I would do extra cardio just to try and burn off the bulk. But I still wanted some muscle. I wanted to be strong, so it was there. I had the basis, the basic ideas of it, but I didn't really understand what lifting does and what being strong means. So I still hated the way I looked. Still thought I was incredibly fat. Still wanted to lose weight, lose fat, but I didn't know how. So thinking back to some of the things that I did those years, food-wise, I stopped avoiding fats as much, but I still restricted my calories. Added a little protein in because I thought that that's what was good for whenever you lifted, and fluctuated on and off whenever it comes to weight. I was just kind of accepting my fate, if you will, that I wouldn't ever be able to diet consistently. So I worked my ass off in the gym, but then I couldn't get my diet right. So I never understood why. I just thought I was doomed to look like how I was forever. And I mean, looking back, I was beautiful. I am beautiful, but of course you don't see it in your own head. And, I wish I could just go back and just shake myself and say, stop, you have so much more to offer than what your arms look like in pictures. So I worked at a gym at the time, and I would do classes. So I would go from cycle class to Zumba class to power pump to whatever class they had. And I remember there were a couple days a week, I would do 4 classes in a row. That's 4 hours of working out. And it was awesome. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm burning so many calories. I'm going to get so fit. And so at that point, I wanted to look a little more muscular. So I was like, I'm going to get so ripped and look badass. And class after class after class. I eventually started working with a trainer. shout out to Josh, because he taught me the basics of lifting and helped me to see what can happen with your body if you lift heavy weights. And of course, heavy weights, stay away, women. And I realized that that actually is one thing that I was missing. And so I worked with him for a year or two and trained with him consistently, and started seeing some good results because I was lifting and started eating a little bit more, and slowly started changing, but I still did classes. And at this time, I actually began to binge. And gosh, I'm sorry this video is running long, but I started binging. And so I would eat really, really good during the week, and then I would get a weekly cheat meal, which started out just fine. Started as a normal meal. Eventually, the cheat meals got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it turned into a cheat day. Then it would turn into a cheat weekend. And then I remember there were times where I literally could not stop thinking about food. We would have our cheat meal, and everybody else had moved on. I would grab a box of cereal. I would then proceed to eat the whole box of cereal by myself in my room. And I just couldn't stop. I would be physically sick, and I would feel so guilty for it. The next day, I would do hours of cardio, or I would do more classes. I was still lifting, but trying to make up for the backtracking that I had done over the weekend. And that's another thing that, I don't think anybody realized how bad I would binge on my own. And that's one of the things about eating disorders and binging is you do them in secret because you know that deep down that it's wrong, and you hide it. And so I would eat boxes of animal crackers and cookies and boxes of cereal and tons and tons of peanut butter, just things that I normally wouldn't be able to eat much of during the week, or things that I had deemed in my head as bad foods. And then I would just fly off the rail. And of course, diet starts again on Monday, so had that mentality. And, granted, I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea. I was happy in other aspects of life. I loved my job. I loved my friends. I loved Matt, and we were doing so many fun things, but it's just something that I had always kept inside. And, I would be somewhat open about it, but, you don't want to burden anybody with that. And at the time, it seems like such a small, stupid, insignificant problem. But looking back, this is more for me than I think it is for anybody, just being completely open and honest. And so dealt with the binging on and off for a good 2 years, and then tried the paleo diet and still struggled with binging on the weekends. And it's just something awful whenever you feel out of control and you feel like you basically can't get your shit together. You're thinking to yourself, I worked so hard during the week and now I'm completely undoing everything. And, but you can't stop because you have that mentality, I'm not going to get this again. So I'm going to eat everything that I can, and then I'll be really good for the week. And this will be the last time. This is the last time. But it never is, because you don't ever deal with the actual issue of why you feel that way. So tried out paleo, still struggled with binging. And then I finally discovered flexible dieting and learned how to count my macronutrients. And have been basically doing that ever since. And not that it, was magically lifted everything off of me, because I still struggled. I still struggle to this day with urges to binge and binges every now and then. I have days where I've texted my coach Daniel, and I'm like, hey, just ate this, and this, and couldn't stop. But, just knowing that life goes on after a binge, and you don't have to punish yourself with hours of cardio or working out, or, that we're human, that we make mistakes. And this is something that I try and be completely open and honest about, for the reason of helping others. Because, although my struggles and disorders, or whatever you want to call them, aren't as extreme, or aren't as bad as some other people might have it, but at the same time, it's something that I have struggled with, and I feel like the things that I've learned and I've grown from, if I can use them to help one person, it's worth it. It's worth making this 30-minute video for you guys. So it's been on and off for years, and thinking back, this is just another random thing. I used to have an app on my phone, and I think it's called Bite or something. I don't know if anybody knows about it. If you have it, please delete it right now, because basically what you do is every time you take a bite of food, so say I have a bowl of cereal and I take a bite, I log that bite. And then whenever I take another bite, I log that bite. I was only allowed 25 bites in a whole day. And I used that app every day for a good 3 or 4 months, because I thought that limiting my food intake and forcing myself to eat slowly would, one, help me lose weight, but would, two, help me to be able to eat foods without binging. And of course it didn't help, because it is insane. And like I said, if you have that app, please delete it, because it is not a healthy mindset. Anyway, so as of right now, I practice flexible dieting. I basically keep an eye on my macronutrients, my protein, carbs, and fats. But of course, with any addictions or disorders, you can't really get rid of one, and sometimes they turn into another. So right after my contest, I started getting obsessive about my numbers, and I had to take a step back. And that's whenever I had Daniel write all of my meal plans for me, because I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to plan. I didn't want to count numbers. I didn't want to have to log my food all the time. And so, but the fact that I was able to realize that I was becoming obsessive about it helps me to see how much I've grown in the last few years, because I admitted it and I asked for help. And I'm so glad that I did, and I'm so glad that I have the support and the friends and the family that I do, because having people to talk to about it helps tremendously. And you don't realize how many people struggle with various things. I mean, even my anxiety, since I've been more open about it, I've had so many people tell me I have anxiety too, and we can trade anxious stories. But just knowing that there's people there, and people are there to help and to listen, makes the biggest difference in all the world. So I encourage you, if you're struggling with anything, it doesn't have to be related to food or fitness, find someone to talk to. Get educated, find someone to talk to, and don't give up. I think I'm going to try and keep it at 30 minutes for you guys, but feel free if you have questions. I don't do YouTube videos very often. This is hopefully the first of many. But comment, like it, share it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around.